Okay, everybody, good morning and Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday morning as we are studying together Perashat Bo. Today's class is sponsored anonymously for the Refuah Shlema of all of Am Yisrael. Amen. If anyone is interested in sponsoring one of these classes for Refuah, for Elui Nishmat, or for any other reason, please email us info@ejsny.org. My friends, there's an expression in English, and the expression is one that we've maybe heard of in the past. And it goes something like this, right? If someone is trying to do something and they're having a hard time, you say, hello, it's not rocket science, right? You ever heard of that expression? It's not so hard, it's not rocket science. What's very interesting is that in Judaism, the most complicated area, the most complicated halachot are actually as well in the area of rocket science, in the area of calculating the new month. Most difficult area to be smart, and we'll see now soon how that applies, but is the idea of calculating the month and the holidays. And we know that the Jewish calendar is not based on the sun. The Jewish calendar is based on the moon. It all comes back and starts in this week's parasha. So let's open up together chapter 12. Pasuk Aleph. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe ve'Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. God speaks to Moshe and Aharon in Egypt, saying, this is before we leave. The first commandment that we got as a nation is the mitzvah of the new moon, the new month, the new year. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. This month that we're in will be from now on the first of months. Rishon hu lachem lechodshei hashana. It is the first months for the months of the year. Now, let's see what Rashi has to say. The word hazeh, ha-chodesh hazeh, this month. When you say this, it means you're pointing. Says Rashi, Hir'ahu, what was he pointing at? God was pointing at the levana, at the moon. As the new moon was appearing, we know that the moon waxes and wanes. And in the beginning of the month, of the lunar month, the moon is a tiny crescent. And as the month continues, the moon gets bigger and bigger. Of course, the moon is always a whole circle, it's a solid ball, but to us we only see parts of it, and again it's calculations based on where the moon is and where the sun is and how the sun is hitting off of the moon. We only see a part of the moon. The moon doesn't actually get bigger and smaller. We only see a part of the moon based on how the light from the sun is hitting the moon. So in the beginning of the lunar month, where the moon is positioned and where the sun is again always hitting on the moon, on a complete half of the moon, but we only see a piece of it, unless there's an eclipse, again. But we only see a piece of that light, and it looks like a tiny moon. So we're going to say for the rest of the class today, it's a new moon, it's a small moon. Again, the moon doesn't actually get smaller and bigger, but we mean, from our vantage point, it's a small moon, right? It's a crescent. Okay. God showed Moshe a tiny moon. Ve'amar, and he says, when the moon is new, when the moon has a renewal, then it's a Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so when's the Rosh Chodesh? When you see a new moon. Now, that's not actually what the pasuk literally means. Again, let's go back to the pasuk. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. What does that mean? This month will be the first of months. Again, Rashi is stretching the pasuk. On a drash level, he's saying, HaChodesh hazeh, when you see this type of moon, it's going to be Rosh Chodesh. It'll be a new month. That's not what it actually means. It actually means this month will be the first of months. And God was telling him, just the same way in English, January is the new year. Nisan, what we call Nisan, is the new year. When we left Egypt, that's the first month. Beautiful. Now, let's see today, my friends, a very, very complicated Rabbeinu Bahye. And I'll be honest, I myself still don't fully understand everything that we're going to read, but that's what we're here for in this class, to at least begin the topics, to get the wheels turning, and hopefully over time we'll be able to piece different ideas together. But let's begin and study together. Let's study together peace. Again, if you're looking for a nice Dvar Torah that's going to give you chizuk, that's not this class today. Again, we try to mix it up, especially in this class, where it's not a weekly sermon that you're going to go to shul and hear a 5-10 minute power musar. That's not why we dedicate ourselves every morning for 40-45 minutes. We try over here to get a little bit more depth in our general understanding, and I think it's something beautiful to that. So let's see today Rabbeinu Bahye. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. This is the first of months. The first month in Judaism is not January. What's the first month? The new year is Nisan, April. Okay. Lo Amar, first of all, he realizes, Lo Amar debru al kodat bnei Israel. He doesn't speak over here, it doesn't say, usually, Vadaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel. Usually God says to Moshe to tell the people. But here, it doesn't say tell the people. Which would have meant, Sheha mitzvah lechol echad mi Israel. If God would have said that, then it means that there's a mitzvah on every Jew to start calculating when the new year will be and when the new months will be. Should we add an extra Adar? Should it be a leap year? However, in a mitzvah ki'im lebedin, but it's not true. It's not on every Jew. Me and you have no responsibility to start calculating. Is it going to be a leap year? How many days is this month going to have? Don't worry, we don't have to do any of that. Why? It was given only to bedin. Certain mitzvot me and you have to do, like counting the Omer. When is Shavuot going to be? You and I have to do that. We have to start calculating. Okay, it's in 1 day, 2 days, it's in 3 days, right? Today's the 5th day. Today's the 20th day, which is 2 weeks and 6 days. Me and you have to calculate when's Shavuot coming. But here, there's no mitzvah for me and you, for you and I to calculate when is the new year or when is the new month. It's given only to people like Moshe and Aaron. That's what the pasuk says. Al ken bahadabar l'shnehem, and therefore the commandment here is to Moshe and Aaron, because God is saying to experts like yourselves, you are the ones that are obligated to calculate the new months. Now, Amara Chodesh hazeh hu Chodesh Nisan. Which month are they in? They're in Nisan, right before they leave. This is right before they leave. We know they leave in Nisan, and God is saying that this month of Nisan will be the first month of the year. V'karo katuv rishon. The pasuk says it's the first. Hu shamar rishon hu lachem. That's our pasuk. And again in pasuk 18, barishon be'arba'a asar yom lachodesh. God says to Moshe, forever on the first month, on the 14th day of the month, bring a korban pesach. So you see very clearly that Nisan is the first month of the Jewish calendar. Okay? Now, you'll say, but Rabbi, no, it's not. What's the new year in the Jewish calendar? Tishri. Rosh Hashanah, right? Dip the apple, right? In the honey. Everyone knows the song. Have a happy, sweet new year. It's a new year. So what are you telling me now that Nisan is the new year? I thought Tishri was the new year, September. He says that's L'shanim. Tishri, Rosh Hashanah, L'shanim. That's when it comes to the general world. However, when it comes to the Jewish people, Bekan Rishon hu lachem, kilomar eno Rosh Hashanah L'shanim ela lachem legiulatchem. There's two New Years. The same way you could have two birthdays. Birthday for you and a birthday for me. And even for me, I have a birthday when I was born, and then I have a birthday, I could have a different birthday of the beginning, 2 beginnings. I could have the beginning of my life when I was born, I could have the beginning of the year. There could be multiple beginnings. So there's one beginning for the world of Tishri, calculating the years, but there's a separate beginning for the Jewish people, that this is when they were freed. And we should always calculate, the Torah is telling us, back to Nisan, when we're counting months, this is month, right? In English, when you're filling out a check, you don't want to write January, it's too long, so you write 1/, right? 1/ today's date, 1/25/, right? So 1. In Judaism, this is not 1. 1 would be, Nisan is 1. Iyar is 2. And that's why Tishri, what would Tishri be? Let's do the math quickly. Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishri. Tishri would be 7. And again, I'm saying Tishri because that's what Sfaradim say. If you're Ashkenaz, I apologize, it's Tishrei. And even Sfaradim, I got used to myself saying Tishrei. But either way, I know there's going to be a guy who's going to say, Rabbi, it's Tishri. What is this Tishrei? So, okay. V'lachen, he says over here, Tishri would be the 7th. And that's why we find in Bamidbar, chapter 29, Pasuk Aleph, B'chodesh HaShevi'i be'ehad lachodesh, on the 7th month, on the first day of the month, blow shofar. So you see the Torah itself is saying that Tishri is the 7th month. Okay. Why are we calculating? Why is Nisan the, what do we call it? Why is Nisan the reference point? Why we keep going back to Nisan as the first? Kadeshi says, Kadeshi iskera nis al gilat Mizrahi. We want a person to constantly keep remembering that we got redeemed. Right? When a person remembers, what month are we in? So they start counting, Nisan, Iyar. So they go back to Pesach. They say, well, Pesach was, and they'll always remember Pesach. The miracles that happened will always be in the forefront of their mind. And therefore he says, Lo matzinu b'lashon hakodesh shemot miyuhadim. We won't find in Judaism, really in the Torah, there's no names for the months. I'm saying Nisan, Tishri. He says the truth is these names are not biblical. The Torah doesn't have names. The Torah doesn't give names like January, February. There's no names to the months. You know what the names were? 1, 2, 3. Those were the names. B'chodesh harishon, b'chodesh hasheni, b'chodesh hashelishi. There was no originally names. Originally, the way we called the months were by numbers. So where did the names come? Ma she'anu motzi'im shemot. The reason we find names, Hem, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, all of them, Hem shemot chodashim she'alu mebabel. These are non-Jewish names. Someone even told me, a Persian told me, Parsi told me, that even till today, I think Tammuz is the name of that month in Farsi. If I'm not mistaken, any Farsis here, please correct me. Right? So basically, Nisan Iyar is as non-Jewish as January and February, which raises an interesting question. Not for now, but just a question at least. We make all of these nice acronyms. Elul, Ani ledodi vedodi li, or Iyar, Ani Hashem rofeecha. It's very nice, but you're basically making an acronym from a not Jewish month. Right? It's like saying January is an acronym for just, anyways, never, it's January. What are you making a whole gematria from a non-Jewish word? Right? Okay, but maybe you could say that there's still Kedusha in them if we're using them and it became part of our thing, so that maybe there's some significance to it. Okay, I'm sure there's answers already to this. But he says you should know these names. There are names that we took with us when we went exiled into Iraq. They're Iraqi names. Okay? And when we left Iraq, it became part of our vocabulary. Not by mistake, he says on purpose. Originally, we would count the months based on our exodus from Egypt. So they were 1, 2, 3, 4. But when we left Iraq with the Second Temple, we started using a different counting system, not numbers, but names. Nisan, Iyar. And both are for the same reason. The reason we count when we left Egypt, 1, 2, 3, is so that we always date back to Nisan. Because we always want to remember the miracles that God did for us when He took us out of Egypt. But the Jeremiah says, V'lo yomar od hay Hashem asher he'ela et Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. Jeremiah says, V'lo ya'amer od. It won't be said anymore. When you leave Iraq after the first temple, the miracles God says that I'm going to do for you are going to by far overshadow the miracles that you saw in Egypt. So therefore, now Egypt is a thing of the past. Now we have bigger miracles to remember. We have the miracles from Iraq. And therefore, we start counting our months no longer according to the Pesach system of 1, 2, 3, but now we shift to the Iraqi system of Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. Okay. וזה גם כן לזיכרון, כי שם עמדנו בגלות, ומשם גאלנו הקדוש ברוך הוא. Again, to remember that God took us out. ולמדנו מכל זה שאין חודשי השנה שמות מיוחדים, and therefore all that we've said till now is basically, just to summarize, that the names of the Jewish months, they don't really have names, according to the Torah. Just like Keshem, she'en le'yemot hashavua hashemot. What are the names of the day of the weeks? Think about it. In Judaism, how do you say Sunday? Sunday is a non-Jewish way of saying it. It's actually a day, sun, right? Sunday, moon day, Monday, moon, right? Saturn, Saturday. They actually base it on the different planets. But in Judaism, how do you say Sunday? Anyone know? How do you say Sunday? What do you call the first day of the week? He says it's exactly what it is, the first day of the week. That's how we say it. He says we don't have names. Unlike the nations that give every day a different name, we don't have a name for each one. We call it 1, 2, 3, one day from Shabbat. You see, the reference for us is the Sabbath. Just like the months, the reference was leaving Egypt, right, or leaving Iraq. The days of the week are counting to Shabbat. The Anu Monim, we start counting. Today's the first day from Shabbat, the second from Shabbat, the third. This way, all week long, a person is remembering Shabbat. I know it's only Wednesday, but today people start preparing for Shabbat, right? We have to place the orders in, the food has to come, start cooking on Thursday. The truth is Hashem wants us to always remember Shabbat. And you fulfill, by the way, when you do this, the pasuk, Zachor et yom ha-Shabbat lekadesho, which means, remember the Sabbath day. What do you mean, remember the Sabbath day? It's Shabbat, I'm keeping it. Remember it even when it's not. Even when it's Sunday, remember Shabbat. The Gemara tells us there was a big rabbi that when he would Shammai and Hillel, each one had a different approach to how to remember the Shabbat. One rabbi, when he would go shopping, on Sunday, he would find a piece of meat. He'd say, wow, what a cut. I'm going to get this for Shabbat. And then if on Monday, he would find another better cut, he'd say, ooh, wow, this is better. I'm going to eat what I bought yesterday for dinner tonight, and I'm going to save this piece for Shabbat. And this way, he constantly thinking about Shabbat. That's a beautiful way of fulfilling this pasuk. Now, let's move forward. The Torah here writes again that this month shall be for you the head of the months. He says over here something very, very complicated. Again, it's rocket science. He says that Torah is not telling us that we need to calculate the months and the year based on the seeing of the moon. He says over here that really you should know, he's going to bring proof. The true way we know, how do we know when's a new month? How do you know when's a new month in Judaism? How do you know when's the new, because you need to know months so that you can know when the year's over. So the way we know when it's a new month, you would think, is when you see a new moon. And that's what Rashi said. HaChodesh Hazeh, God showed Moshe. He said, look, when you see a moon like this, that means it's a new month. But he says, that's not true. The truth is, yes, we look at the moon, but that's not really how we know. There's really no source that in the Torah, if you see a new moon, then you make it a new month. But if you see it the next day or the day before, then make it the day before. He says no. Determining not only a new moon, but an extra month of the year doesn't depend at all on the moon, but on calculations. Again, this is the most complicated area in Jewish law, calculating if there should be an extra month. You see, in Judaism, we live our holidays, our lives cycle, the yearly cycle is based on the moon. Now, the moon, there's nothing wrong with that. Problem is, the moon is not in tandem with the sun. As an example, it takes the earth around 365 days to make one rotation around the sun. That's why we have seasons. Sometimes, as an example, in New York, where we live, so it'll be a little bit warmer in June, July, August, because the way the proximity and the position, the angle of where we are in this hemisphere vis-a-vis the sun. Yeah? So it takes 365 days to rotate the sun. The moon, it takes how many days for the moon? How many days for the moon to rotate the earth? Again, the moon is spinning in two ways, right? So the lunar year, if you do the math, we'll see soon the numbers. But basically, the lunar year is 354 days. Okay? 354 days. That means there's an 11-day difference between the lunar and the solar year. If that's the case, every year, if you're going to base your holidays on the moon, that means every year you're going to be 11 days behind the sun. So just think about it. Let's say today, this year, Pesach is going to be in April 5th. Okay? Next year, it's going to be 11 days earlier. It's going to be March, right? Whatever, 26, 24. And then next year, it's going to be 11 days earlier. March 13th, right? And then next year, it's going to be March 2nd. Now in 10 years, it's going to be in December. So that means Pesach is going to be now in the spring, one day in the winter, in a few decades, right? Every decade, it's going to change seasons. By the way, that's how the Arabs celebrate their holiday Ramadan. The Arabs have Ramadan, sometimes it's in the summer, sometimes it's in the winter. Yeah? Because they go with the moon, and purely the moon. But the Torah wants that we should have we have to balance the moon, but also it has to kind of stay within the seasons. So we have to always adjust. That's why we have a leap year. Every 3 years, we add a month, Adar Bet, a second Adar, so that we could add 30 days to the year, so that we can stay in the seasons. That's why Pesach is always in the spring, sometimes in March, sometimes in April, but it's always in this season. Right? The Torah writes that we're commanded that Pesach should always be Shamoret Chodesh Ha'aviv. Pesach should always be around springtime. So this is, again, it's a complicated calculation that needs to be done. But Rabbeinu Bahya says it has nothing to do with the seeing of a new moon. It has everything to do with the calculation that we already had. V'katav Rabbeinu Hananel. He quotes now Rabbeinu Hananel. For the next few minutes, we're going to quote Rabbeinu Hananel. Also a big scholar from 900 years ago, 1,000 years ago. He says that we base our calendar, eno ella al pi heshbon. It's really on astronomical calculations. Lo al pi re'iyat levana. Nothing to do with the seeing of the moon. How do I prove it to you? He says. It's a very simple proof. Kol arba'im shana. What that means, by the way, is that we have already from the beginning of time, we have a calculation that will tell us when the new moon will appear. We know today what's going to be in the year 2080. We know exactly what the moon's going to look like. We know where it's going to be. We have it all calculated. God gave us the number, the exact number. He's going to give it to us in a second, of how long it takes for the moon to rotate. And therefore, we don't need to see the moon. We know where it's going to be. Yeah? We know exactly how this movie plays out. And therefore, he says, I'll bring a proof. Kol arba'im shana. Just think for a minute, 40 years that we were in the desert. Did we ever see the moon for 40 years? Did we see the moon? I say, of course, why not? Can be, he says. We had the clouds of glory. The clouds covered us in the day, covered us in the night. How are you going to see a new moon? The Pasuk says in Nehemiah that God never allowed the clouds to leave. So how do we make the new moon, sanctify the new moon? How do we know when's Rosh Chodesh? Ela bevadai must be, he says. Ikara mitzvah, clearly the principal method of determining the new moon is again based not on the seeing of the moon, but on calculations. Vehine masoret beyadenu. We have an old-standing tradition. Ki yud bet chodesh, 12 months in the year. 5 of them, hey chodashim, have 30 days. 5 of them have 29 days. That leaves 2 more. Shnai mehem, the other 2, sometimes they're 30 days, sometimes they're 29 days, and sometimes one is 30 and one is 29. And we know, what are those 2 months? Mar Heshvan and Kislev. That means, If you open a back of certain sidurim, they'll tell you this. We will always have okay, Tishri will always be a one day Rosh Chodesh. Cheshvan, I mean, again, that's how we have it today. He's going with a different calculation. But over here it says Cheshvan will always be 2 days. Kislev sometimes one, sometimes two. Tevet sometimes one, sometimes two. Shevat always one. Adar always two. Nisan always one. Iyar always two. Sivan always one. Tammuz always two. Av always one. Elul always two. Okay? So what that means is, when the month is 29 days, when it's a 29-day month, so the month after it will be a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, 30 and 1. Excuse me, there's no 30. The month after it will be a 1-day Rosh Chodesh, first day. When it's a 30-day month, so the last day of the month, the 30th day, plus the next day, the first day of the next month, will be both of them Rosh Chodesh. And look at this, you can bring in a minute a crazy proof. Umasoret beyadenu, we also know, ki Rosh Chodesh Tishri Rosh Hashanah l'shanim. V'chi l'chol Chodesh halachal Moshe b'Sinai, kat yom u'mehza v'tash tzag halakim. Okay, look at this. Every month is actually, it takes the moon 29 days and 12 hours and 793 portions of a hour that's divided into 1,080 portions, which is 44 minutes. So basically the month is 29 and a half days, 29 hours, 29 days, 12 hours and 44 minutes. That's how long it takes for the moon to make one full circle around planet Earth. Okay, 29 days, 12 hours and 44 point something minutes. Okay? It's very, very crazy that this was written 3,000 years ago without all of these computers, without microscopes, telescopes, and seeing deep into the satellites. The rabbis had a Mesorah. And the truth is that today, the number that NASA has is getting closer to our number. Okay, they used to say we were wrong, we were off by X amount of time. Then they got better computers and they redid their calculation, and then they realized that they were wrong, and we're actually a little bit there. But they're going to get closer. One day they'll get the right number like we have it. And this is what the pasuk says in the Divrei Hayamim: Ubenei Yisachar yodei bina la'itim. The people of Yisachar, the scholars come from Yisachar. They are the ones that know how to calculate all of this. So you see, this is called the Soda Ibur, the secret of the calendar, of determining the new month, of determining the extra month. So, Aval Reyeta Levana, if the new moon has been sighted, everybody knows that a new month has begun. Right? If you see a new moon, then you know when Pesach will be, when Yom Kippur will be. So what's the cheshbon for? Cheshbon eno ela lachachamim mechashbin u'modin leYisrael vehem osim al pihem vezehu shekatuv v'da'at ma ya'aseh Yisrael shehem matayim v'chol ha'chaim al pihem yetzu. Basically, the sages needed to know the calculations, right, in order to inform the people ahead of time what to expect, and in order to check whether the moon is actually being seen in a correct way. Meaning, again, you could go out and look with your eyes and see a new moon, and you'll know, if you see a new moon, you'll know, okay, so that means Pesach will be in 14 days. If today's the first day, then Pesach is in the 15th, it's in 14 days. But the rabbis really, again, they already knew what the answer is going to be. Yeah? It's like playing a game of chess with an expert. You could do what you like. The expert will make sure to maneuver that the game shall be the way he wants it. The rabbis already know ahead of the time, right? Some people say that people in Vegas already know how the game's going to end up and who's going to win. Okay, again, that's already betting But according to us, we know already when Rosh Chodesh is going to be before it happens. We know when we're going to see a new moon. And I'll prove it to you. Look at this amazing, amazing proof. We're going to go now, my friends. Take a seat back. Let's talk about a story of King David. This is a story in Samuel, Shemuel Aleph, chapter 20. We know Shaul, the king, wanted to kill David. He didn't like him. He was jealous. He felt threatened. Shaul invites David to a party. And David's afraid at the party he's going to get killed. So David and Yonatan, Shaul had a son Yonatan, who was best friends with David. So David makes a plan with Yonatan. And look at the plan. He says, Hine Chodesh Mahar. He says, tomorrow is going to be Rosh Chodesh. Ve'anochi Yoshev Eshev Im HaMelech. And Yonatan says, I'm going to sit with my father, the king. And I want to see my father. I'm going to try to bring your name up and see if my father wants to still kill you or he's forgiven you. Pause over here. Says Rabbeinu Hananel. How did they know that tomorrow is going to be Rosh Chodesh? They didn't have weather forecast. It's like saying tomorrow it's going to rain. How do you know that? If you don't have, again, today we have technology. But how do you know what tomorrow is going to bring? Tomorrow is going to be Rosh Chodesh. How do you know? You know it's going to be a new moon tomorrow? Shal pi cheshbon hayu. They knew it was Rosh Chodesh because they already had the numbers. They already set up the whole calendar for the next 10,000 years. Maybe you won't see a new moon tomorrow. Maybe Rosh Chodesh will be in 2 days. And they won't establish tomorrow as the new moon. Not only that. Not only that. Not only did they know that when's going to be Rosh Chodesh. Look at this. They even knew when's going to be a 2-month Rosh Chodesh. You know, sometimes, like we said, it's 2. And he says from the same story. David hid out in the field. The king sits down. He sees David is not there. He said, okay, maybe he didn't come one day. He's not feeling good. The next day, the Pasuk says, the next day, when it was Chodesh again, and David again didn't show up. And Shaul gets all upset. Where's David? Where's Ben Yishai? He didn't come yesterday and he didn't come today. So you see, they already knew when's going to be a Rosh Chodesh, 2 days. And this was in the beginning of Jewish history. This is relatively beginning. This is before they needed to make an extra month. So you see, two days is not out of because you weren't sure. No. Sometimes there needed to be a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. Of course, they were able to read astrology and understand everything about the cosmos. You see very clearly that year, that month was a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. Like we have till today. Many people think that we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh because we're not sure. We're not sure, is it the first day, is it the second day? But he says, you see, back then they already had a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. Nothing to do with being unsure. They knew when's going to be Rosh Chodesh and they knew that it was going to be a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. Again, because they went with a calculation. And it's been Elef U'Me'ah Shanim, already 100 years. What happened? Again, we're going to fast forward for the rest. We can't read it all. But he says basically there was a rabbi, his name was Antignos. And Antignos had 2 students, one Sadok and one Baitos. And they misunderstood him. They thought that the rabbi was saying in one of the classes that there's no Olam Haba, there's no reward and punishment. And these 2 students decided to leave the Jewish path, throw everything out of the door, into the garbage. And they decided to poke holes in the Jewish system. And basically they tried discounting the rabbis. And they said the rabbis don't know calculations. Really, it goes with the moon. You have to see the moon. And that's where all the confusion started of needing to base the calculation on seeing of the moon. But he says the truth is the seeing was secondary. The primary way of calculating a new month was calculation. And Rabbi Gamliel, we know when the Gemara says, I don't care about what you see. I have from my father's father already a clear tradition of when's going to be Rosh Chodesh. Not only that, Mishnah says, if Beit Din sees the new month, if they see a new moon, but they didn't get a chance to sanctify it, You know, on Shabbat, you stand up and you say, today is Shabbat. Shabbat is whether you like it or not. But you should know that Rosh Chodesh is only Rosh Chodesh if they get up and they say, today is Rosh Chodesh. If they don't get a chance to sanctify it, and then sun sets already, it's too late. They have to wait till tomorrow. He says, but if you're basing it on the new moon, how could you wait till tomorrow? If you saw a new moon today, then today has to be Rosh Chodesh. How do you wait till tomorrow? Rather, it must be, they didn't base it on the new moon. He relied on a calculation, and he knew that based on his calculation, actually, it was able to be deferred till the morrow. Now, why did Rabban Gamliel have in his attic? The Mishnah says he had in his attic different shapes of moons that he would show witnesses. Why would he need that for if you don't care about the witnesses and what they say? So Rabbeinu Hananel says he only had them to actually show all the heretics that I, Rabban Gamliel, know already. He didn't use it to question the witnesses. He used it to show the heretics that I know exactly what the upcoming new moon is going to look like, where it's going to be positioned. And that's why he had all of those different models in the attic of his study hall. And then when he showed it to them, they believed him. Again, it's very deep stuff over here. But let's fast forward to the next piece of Rabbeinu Hananel, again, staying in this topic. Now, he says like this. V'darshu Razal. Now he ends Rabbeinu Hananel, and now he starts quoting Midrash, the rabbis. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month is the first of months. Ilmale lo zachu Yisrael lemitzvah acheret ela lezo. If the only mitzvah we got out of the 613 was this one, of sanctifying the new month, shemekablim pnei shechina pa'am achat b'chodesh dayam, it would be enough. You know what he's saying over here? He's saying that when you say every month, we have something called Birchat Levana. You guys say it? Every month, you get up in the middle of the month, towards the first week into the month, we look at the new moon, and we say a blessing where we bless God over His creation, over the world. And really, when we're doing that, it's a very holy activity. And really what we're doing is we're accepting the Shekhinah. And if only we did it once a month, it's enough. All we need is that mitzvah, in a way. It would have been enough if all you had was this mitzvah. That's how powerful the mitzvah of blessing the new moon is. And what does it mean? Is Remez lekneset Israel. It's telling us that the Jewish people, it's an illusion that the Jewish people, as a spiritual concept, which is called atara, crown. We are the transported by God's in God's arms, and when we say Birchat Levana, we're accepting the Shekhinah, and therefore lekach teknu levarech otam me'omed v'lo miyoshev. That's why it's so powerful that the mitzvah is to say the Birchat Levana standing, because in a way you're receiving the Shekhinah. You have to be conscious of such an idea. Now, what does that mean that you're receiving the Shekhinah? He says, because when you see a new moon and you bless it, again, you bless it a week into the month, you have to wait till it's a certain size. But when you basically say the Bracha Levana, we are testifying, Me'id al Hidush ha'olam, Shehu Ikar ha'emunah. It's a person that's testifying that the universe was created by God. So you're making a huge, heavy statement of here. I believe that the world has a creator. By the way, when you say Kiddush on Friday night, you're doing the same thing. What's Friday night Kiddush? You're saying, I believe that God rested today. There's many people, unfortunately, that don't believe that God created the world. But when you say Birchat Levana, you are saying God created the world. When you're saying Kiddush, you're saying God created the world. And the same way you stand Friday night, you have to stand in Birchat Levana. Okay. Ve'amru, look at this a little bit deeper. Look at this. Gavan ha-shihrut. You ever looked at the moon? By the way, it's an interesting halakha. You're not supposed to stare at the moon. You could glance at the moon. The moon has black pockets. When you look at it, it's white, but sometimes you see a little bit black. He says, you know what that is? Hu me'inyan mit'abelet al Yisrael. Because the moon, which represents the Jewish people, it's in mourning. There's black spots as a sign of mourning for the Jewish people, which are in Galut. Shlomo HaMelech says in Shir HaShirim, Yafa kalevana, beautiful as the moon, bara kahama, clear as the sun. The moon is given beauty, yofi. The moon has beauty. And the sun was given brilliance, clarity. Lefisha levana dugmat isha beyetzira hatahtona. The moon represents the woman. Woman, we said a class in the past, gender roles. The woman receives. You know anything that if anyone knows anything about the moon and the sun, the moon doesn't generate its own light. The moon receives light from the sun. The sun is the giver. The sun is the mashpia. And the moon is the mekabel, the receiver. Just like a female, a woman receives in the relationship, the man gives. So the sun is compared to the man, to the giver. Intelligence, clarity, a man. The moon is yafa, beauty. We know women have beauty, right? In isha ila yofi. Women were created for yofi, for beauty. Men do labor, hard work. Women, beauty, they take care of their bodies, of themselves, of their face, right? It's a big industry today. The sun, it's clear, yellow sun. The moon has blackness to it. That's why the sun is clear, beautiful and clean, but the moon is not. Because the moon represents the Jewish people. And we are now in Galut. And the same way we're in Galut, we have black spots to us, so to speak. And that's represented by the moon having black spots. So too the Shekhinah also. Shekhinah is in Galut, it's in Tsar, it's in pain. Before God took us out of Egypt, and by the way, we knew from the beginning of time that we're going to end up being in exile again. Meaning when God took us out of Egypt, he kind of already hinted that it's going to be a temporary salvation. You're going to go into exile again, as we are today, unfortunately. And that's why we're, again, modeling the moon. The moon is 30 days. The Jewish kingship only lasted for 30 generations. And he spoke about this back by Parashat of Zerah, the child of Yehuda, Parashat Vayeshev. He does the math and the 30 generations that the Jewish people were in paradise, in a euphoria, in a utopia. And today we went back. This, by the way, the moon goes up and down. There's a lot of symbolism you should know of why we are like the moon. The moon has ups and downs, waxes and wanes. As a Jewish nation, we have ups and downs. But we can never give up. We have to always realize that better days will come. Even if we're in a waning stage of life, even if now I'm on the decline, health is not good, parnassah is not good, I'm losing, my relationships are not good. But we learn from the moon that we're going to get better, we're going to get stronger. And the pasuk therefore continues. Yisrael monin levana. The Jewish people base their holidays on the moon, not the sun. And the moon is a Jewish calculation, as opposed to the sun, which is given to the goyim. Why? Ma levana. Look at this, beautiful. The same way the levana is nir'et bayom ve'balayla. The sun, the moon, is seen in the day and in the night. I don't know if you knew that. You could go up sometimes in the middle of the day, you could look up, and you could see a moon. In the middle of the day, broad daylight. You could see a beautiful white moon in the sky. Yes, you ever saw it? By the way, Rashi over here has a problem. He says, how did God show Moshe a new moon? How did he show him a new moon if it's daytime? But over here, Rabbeinu Bahya is saying, that's the point. God is showing Moshe maybe the moon in the day to say, the same way the moon can be seen in the night or in the day, so to the Jewish people, ba'olam hazeh u ba'olam haba, have an existence in this world and in the next world. We have two existences. However, Zar'o shel Esav and the like, they only count for the sun. The sun is shining in the day, but in the night it's gone. The sun in this world, it's called Gadol, but the day will come that the sun will actually be overpowered. Right? We say by the moon, after Bechad Levana, if you open it up in the books, let's see where it is over here. The pasuk says, "V'haya ora levana ke'ora hama." It says that one day, the day will come that the levana will be bigger than the moon, and shiv'atayim. The day will come that the sun will actually be smaller. Today it's big, but it's going to be a katan. Hine katon et aticha bagoyim. And therefore, the Jewish people will be called Gadol. Umi goy gadol, asher lo Elohim kerovim elav. Look at this beautiful parable, and we'll end with this. Mashal lemelech shekidesh isha. A king once betrothed a lady, and when they were engaged, katav la matanot mu'atot. When they were engaged, he gave her presents. Kevan sheba lenos'a. Once he got to marry her, katav la matanot merubot. The gifts that he gave after marriage were much greater than the gifts that he gave before. Kach ba'olam hazeh. So too in this world, we have to realize, my friends, right now, we're only engaged to God. Like the pasuk says, ve'erastich li le'olam. In this existence, we are only engaged. When you're engaged, the chatan gives the kala small gifts. In this world, God, who is engaged to us, only gave us a moon. We don't have the best life in this world. There's a lot of suffering that as Jews we endure. Aval yemot Mashiach, my friends, we must know that when Mashiach comes, it's the time that we're going to be married to God. Like it says, Ki bo alayich osaich amonai tevaot shemo. God will be not engaged but married to us. Bo'el means to consummate the marriage. And be'ota sha'ah, and when that day comes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu moseh lahem et hakol. Like the king who gives his wife after the wedding, he gives her rights to the palace, he gives her everything. So too when we get married to God on the days of Mashiach, we're going to be given all of the blessing, all of the brachot be'ezat Hashem. We should be zocheh to those days speedily and in our time. In Rabbi Amenu, Amen. Again, a lot to chew on over here, but just to open some ideas. We'll see you, God all willing, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.